Today we're going to be going over how to build a tip calculator using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. This tip calculator will allow you to put in the total check, amount of guests, select a percentage, and you get a total per person and a tip per person. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevJour. Today I'm going to show you how to create a simple tip calculator using JavaScript, HTML, and SASS, CSS. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is create my file structure. So first I'm just going to have a simple index.html, and then I'm also going to create a calculator, so calculator.js. And then I also want to create a new folder, and this is going to be where our SASS is going to live. And inside of that, we're going to create a style.scss. Okay, so inside of this style.scss, I already know I'm going to be using Bootstrap icons for this. So I'm just going to import those in there, and then I'm going to add watch SASS so it creates the style sheets for me. If you don't know how to do that part, I actually have another video. You can look through my channel where it shows you how to use the VS Code to create your CSS from your SASS. But let's go ahead and get started on the HTML. So let's do HTML5, and let's give it a document title of tip calculator. So tip calculator. Now, I'm also going to be using Bootstrap just because it's easy, like I normally do. If you don't want to use Bootstrap, you can do your own CSS, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to be using Bootstrap. And then I'm also going to add another CSS reference that's going to reference this style.min.css. So if we come over here, CSS, style.min.css. So that way that anything that we add over here while it's building, we'll be able to see it. I'm just going to drop that output down too so it's not in the way. All right, so let's start building out what we need. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to set up a div with a container, and then we're going to give it a margin top of 5. And then inside of this div, we want to have an h1 that's centered. And then inside of this, we're just going to say tip calculator. And we have the live server running, so you'll be able to see it as I'm doing it. So you'll be able to see all of this kind of being put together. Okay, so I'm just going to add a break tag here, and I want to do another div with a row that's going to be justify content center, so that it actually creates this the content. So we're going to do like a column MD6, and it's just going to center it inside of the screen. And I can show you that by doing div.column MD6, and then inside of that, let's do a card, or a div.card, and then div.card body. And now we have that code created. You can see that over here it kind of centers it in the screen, so we don't have to worry about creating additional columns. So pretty cool little thing here if you've never used it before inside of Bootstrap. Okay, so now that we have our card or card body, we want to have some inputs. The first input is going to be for the total amount of the check. The second input is going to be for the total amount of guests. And then finally, we're going to have like a checkbox that's going to have like a button look to it where you can select a percentage and then submit in order to get the the tips per person as well as the total per person. So let's go ahead and start adding those in. So I'm going to do div input group, because this is going to have where it has like the icon in the beginning of it. Inside of that, I want to do a span input group text, and then inside of this, I want to do an icon. That's going to be the Bootstrap icon, and it's going to be the currency $. Okay, so now let me just make this a little bit easier to read. because we will be copying this and making it. But basically, it's creating the dollar symbol that's going to go before our text box. So we have our span there. Now let's do an input of number, and then the name for this is going to be well, we don't really need a name on it because we're not submitting anything, so we don't really need a name or an ID in this case. So I'm just going to add let's do a class. So class equals form control, and then form control large, and then let's also give this a class of total. Okay, so now we have the total amount of the ticket. So we're going to do min equals 0, and then we want it to have a step of just 1 cent. So we're going to do 0, 1. Okay, so this should give us where we have a number box where we can increment it this way, or we can just type in the amount and it won't let us go past 0. Okay, so now let's take this and we're going to add another one just like it right below it. And instead of having the bootstrap icon currency dollar, we're going to do people fill. And we don't need a step on this one. But we do want to have a min of at least 1, because you need to have at least 1 guest. Also, while I'm in here, let's go ahead and do a placeholder here. And the placeholder is going to be total check. And then this placeholder will be total number of guests. Okay, so now we have 2 boxes. It's not extremely pretty, but it's functional, so we'll get to the styling of it later. Okay, so that would be enough for this. Let me close this out so I have more screen room. Okay, so inside of our card, we have our 2 input groups. Next, we want to do our tip percentage, and right now it's just going to be a radio button, but we can actually change that in the style sheets. So inside of this, let's do a div, and we want to make it centered as much as possible. And then we're going to do a label of form label. And we don't need a for on this one just because it's going to be kind of encompassing all of them. But it's just the, I guess it's just a label for it. So let's do something like select tip percentage. Select tips percentage. Okay, so now we're actually going to create a class because this class is going to be used in the JavaScript. So let's create another div, and this is going to be form check, because it's going to encompass all of our forms or all of our checkboxes. Inside of this, we're going to make a few additions and copy it. So let's create a div inside of this called radio button label, and then inside of this we can do an input of radio, and on this we do need a name, and the ID for this is going to be percentage and whatever the actual percent is. And let's go ahead and throw on a class here called percentage. Okay, so that'll give us 1 radio button, and let's go ahead and make the first one checked. Actually, I'm going to copy and paste that, so I don't want to do that yet. We'll come back and do that. All right, so now let's do another label, and this one's going to be for percentage 0, and that'll make more sense whenever we actually go to start adding in the styling for it. But basically it's going to be where whenever you click on the button that's going to be representing this, it's going to be taking that click, and it's basically going to make it where it hides the checkbox or the radio button, but it actually checks it in the background. Okay, so we have this one here. Let's go ahead and create another one. And this is going to be, actually let's create a few of them. So let's do 0, 10, 15, 18, 20. So 0, 10, 15, 18, 20. Okay, so let's take, this one's going to be 20%, This one's going to be 18%. This one is going to be, what was it, 15%. This one's 10. So we got 0, 10, 15, 18, 20. So now, oh, I got to change these two. So 20, 18, 15, and 10. So just to show you why we're doing it this way, like right now, if you click on the 15, 18, 20, or 0, it checks the box. But right now, if you click on 10, it doesn't check the box because it's not referencing the correct placement. And again, that's going to come into play when we actually go to build out the CSS for it, because these radio buttons are not going to be visible. It's just going to look like a button. Okay, so now we can make this first one. We're just going to make it where it's checked. So we're just going to put in checked. So it's always checked. There's always something that's going to be checked there. Okay, so now we got this text center ends here. Let's add a break tag, and then we're going to do a p class text center, and then inside of this we're just going to do a button, and it's just going to be a type button, so we don't have to worry about it. And this is just going to be calculate tip. Let's go ahead and add a class onto this as well. So class equals btn primary, btn large, and then let's just also add a class we're going to use called calculate btn, and that's going to actually be referenced in the JavaScript. Okay, so now we have total check, guessed, percentages, calculate tips. So outside of this card, so I'm going to minimize that. And outside of that card, I want to have it where there is two cards. So let's do div row and then div column md6 times 2. And then inside of this, we're going to do div card, div card body, and then inside of this we're going to add in the totals. So let's start with this one. We're just going to do in h3, and let's say total, and I'm going to format this with CSS, so that's why I'm going to wrap it in a span, but we're going to do total per person. And then underneath this, we're going to do span, and then this one's going to be per person. Let's also start it off with the 0 value. So now let me take this, copy it down, and instead of doing total per person, we're going to do tip per person, and we can change this class to tip amount. Okay, so that's kind of the way that I want it to look, but why is it not doing the columns? Oh, it's probably because of my okay, let me adjust the screen here. There we go. So it's a little bit easier so you can understand what I'm doing here. So we're gonna have total per person, and then the tip per person, and again this is going to be styled with CSS, so it'll make a little bit more sense whenever I get closer to being done with it. Okay, so I think for the most part that is all that we need in here, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and then at the very end of this I'm just going to do a reference to our JavaScript. So calculate JS. Now here comes the scripting part of it. So let's get started with the class tip calculator. Inside of this class, we're going to have a constructor, and okay, inside of this we're going to have a constructor, and then we're going to have a calculate tip function, and then inside or outside of this we're going to do a constant variable. So calculator equals new tip calculator. And now we have the two functions we're going to use, and this should pretty much be called at all times. So if we come in here and we do a console.log load it, we should be able to inspect, go to console, and see that it is being loaded whenever the page is loaded. So we don't have to make any additional calls or anything over here. We can just just set it as part of the script. So as soon as the script loads, it loads the class. So it does it automatically for us. Okay, so now let's create some variables. So let me get a list of the variables that I am using over here. So we're going to be using the calculate button for our button. Where's that at? So we got calculate btn over here. So let's come over here and create this button equals document query selector and calculate btn. We also are going to be doing the total and the people element. So let's create a variable for total. Oh, we need to change that to people. So total people. And then over here, we're going to do this dot total. Let's see, element equals document dot query selector, and it's going to be total. And then finally total dot this dot people element equals document query selector people. Okay, so now we have those three elements to actually start our calculations. What else do we need to grab? So we need to get the percentages. So we have the percentages over here, the class as percentage. So let's create a query selector all for this. So we're going to do this dot percentage elements equals document dot query selector all, and then we're going to iterate through each one of these percentages in order to grab that. So now the last thing we created a actually I think I need to wrap the bottom of this inside of a div. So we're going to do div dot result, and we're just going to paste that in there. So we're going to use this class result as the class that we are going to be applying everything to. So let's do result element equals document dot query selector dot result. Okay, so now we have all of our elements. Final thing that we need to do here is whenever this dot button, we're going to add an event listener of click, and let's see, click, we're going to do the short function version, and this is just going to be this dot calculate tip, and it's just going to run it. So right now if we come in here and we do console.log button clicked, we should be able to click that, and now we have our button click event. So now we just got to grab these variables, do some math, add it to the screen. So inside of this, we are going to create a constant for total, and that's going to equal parse float this dot total element dot value. And let's do the same thing for people. So equal parse float this dot people element dot value. So now we have the values from our total and from our people. So let's create a new variable, and let's just say let percentage equal 0, and then let invalid equal 0. So the invalid is actually going to make it where you can't submit this form unless you put something in here. That way there's always something there. So in order to do that, Bootstrap has a class called isInvalid. So we're just going to do this dot total element dot class list dot remove, because we want to make sure it doesn't exist whenever it goes to run it. So is invalid. And I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to do it for the people element as well. So it's going to remove the invalid class if it exists, and then it's going to check it, and if it needs to, it'll re-add it. So let's first do if is nan, because we want to make sure that it can actually calculate the function. So if is nan, not people, let's do total first, or if the total is less than or equal to 0. So if the total amount is blank, or if it is less than or equal to 0, we want to do this dot total element dot class list dot add is invalid. Okay. I'm also going to just copy and paste this for the people. So let's take this, this, and this. People. Okay, so now if we go to add something, you see it shows the bootstrap invalid icon, but if we change this, change it to 1, it'll remove the invalid. So as long as we have something on here, then it will work. Okay. So if at any point this invalid number is greater than 0, we need to not do anything. So let's go ahead and do invalid plus plus for this, and invalid plus plus here as well. So let's go ahead and do a check. So let's do if invalid is greater than 0. We just want to return. Okay, so right now, if you try to put anything in here and it doesn't get this check for whatever reason, you go to hit calculate, it's not going to return a NaN value, because it just won't return anything if this invalid actually goes up. Okay, so if that does not happen, now we want it to actually do the work. So let's do this dot percentage elements dot for each, and then we're just going to do element, make that there, and close it. Okay, so for each percentage element, so for each one of these over here, get rid of that for now, each one of those we're going to do if element dot checked. If element dot checked, we're just going to do or set the percentage to equal to parse integer element dot value. Okay, so now it should be able to grab that percentage as well as our total check, total number of guests. Okay, so now let's set up a constant tip amount equals total, and we want to make this, we want it to do math, so we're going to make it multiply by the percentage, divide it by 100, and then we're going to divide that by the amount of people. So that'll give us how much of the total each person is responsible for based on the tip. I think how much tip they need to provide based on the total amount. That's the correct words I'm trying to find. Okay, so next is going to be the total per person, and this is going to equal to total divided by people plus tip amount. Okay, so now we have the two variables that we're looking for. We just got to add them to the results. So let's do this dot result element dot query selector, and we called the first one the class of tip amount, and then we're going to do text content for this one. So text content is going to be equal to $sign for the actual monetary amount, and then $sign curly bracket for the variable. So tip amount to fixed, and we're just going to pass it as a 2 decimal integer. or float, boolean, no, float, yes. Okay, so let's do, oh, wrong one. So let's do this, and we're going to copy it over, and the tip amount, we're going to change this to our other class, which was per person. And the text content here is going to be total per person. And that should do that. So if we take in a check that's $1,000 divided by 10 people, and we calculate it, my calculations are wrong. What am I doing wrong? Not supposed to get a nan amount here. So let me see what my calculations are. So we got total times percentage divided by 100 divided by people. Total per person is total divided by people plus tip amount. Okay. Let's see, percentage elements for each. Okay, let's see, element dot value. So that's going to be the percentages, and the reason why is because they do not have a value associated with them. So let's do 0 there. Let me go ahead and add the values all the way down. And then this one is going to be 10. This one's going to be 15, 18, and 20. Okay, let's try that again. So let's do 1,000 divided by 10 people. Okay, $100 per person, 0% tip. $110 per person with a 10% tip, which would be 10% of 1,000, or 10% of the $100 that's per person, which then makes it $10. So $100 plus 10 gives you the total amount. Okay. Oh, so it is working. So let's do, I'm going to show you how to style this a little bit. And then after I get done styling that, I'm probably going to fast forward the video just because I'm just going to be adding some additional styles to it. But for right now, just watch while I do this one element. So we're going to do body. Let's go ahead and set our font size to 1.25 rem. And now let's come in here and do the form check. So we got dot form check, and we want to do let's do padding dash left 0 for right now because it's going to be centered, so we want to keep it centered. Let's do radio dot button or dash button dash label, and this label we're going to do display inline block, and we're going to set a cursor for it of pointer because it's going to become a button. So now it kind of lays them out next to each other, and whenever you hover over it, it gives you the pointer cursor. Okay. Next, let's do an and input type equals radio. Why is that not working? Well, that would be why that's not working. I got to finish it off. Okay. So we're going to do display none here because we don't want the radio buttons to show, but we want the percentages to show. So let's do an and plus label. And now we're going to format the label. So we're going to do border 2 pixels solid. I'm going to use my standard colors. So 38A4EF. Let's do background dash color, and we're going to make it white initially, and then let's add some padding of, let's say, like 6 pixel and 10 pixel, not too much. Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, yeah, so just remember this is, small screen because I'm having to dual screen it, but these would be next to each other in your screen, but I'm just trying to show you the design of the button for right now. Okay, so let's do a border radius, and let's just make it 5 pixels. Let's set the color to match the border, and the font size is good. Okay, so after the label, let's do an and checked plus label. And now we're going to make it where it's the background color changes to the blue color, and the color of the text is white. Okay, so now whenever we click on these, it should change for us. Okay, so that is that's pretty much it. So I'm going to finish off some CSS. I'm going to go into silent mode for right now. But once I get done, I'll come back on and kind of give you a rundown of what I did. But for right now, just enjoy the show. Okay, so that is all of the styling that I need to do. I formatted the results using the result class, which I probably should have slowed down in the video, but you'll be able to see it here. But the rest of it was just some general formatting. So if we come in here and do one final check, so let's say $1,000 divided by 5 people with 0%. It's $200 a person. 10%, we have $220 a person with a $20 tip per person. So again, pretty easy project. I mean, it's very versatile. You can use this tip calculator. You can build an app with it. You can integrate it into your website. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it, or you can just have it for reference on your phone and then use it as the way to calculate tips whenever you're at a restaurant with other people. So again, this is a pretty easy tutorial using JavaScript. I mean, it's not too difficult for the class. Everything else is bootstrapped. Yeah, so I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. If you like this video or you have any comments or concerns about it, leave me a note below. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to my channel. I have a ton of JavaScript tutorials, and I'm actually going to be coming out with a pretty neat PHP tutorial over the next few weeks. So just be on the lookout for that. But subscribe, and I will talk to you later.